I'm going to read this question. I have periods of pretty intense or fearfulness. Maybe I'm projecting this. These days, such as for several days when and after RBG. I get into little notes that my internet connection is unstable, so I pause. And John Lewis died, or just doing something like watching a little video about how the wolves in Yellowstone have improved the environment there, or because of someone's kindness. I find myself wondering if I should just let the tears flow as much as they want, or whether there is something that would be more skillful and that would perhaps toughen me up, some kind of work with my body perhaps. Also, I think it may be related to almost constant, mostly mild back pain. So perhaps I should be working with this instead. That is such a great question because, we could actually, could we have a show of hands about who has never had those kinds of questions about your practice? Should I do this? Should I do that? Should I be with this? Should I sit with this? Should I, what should I do? So I may not exactly answer the specific question that's asked, but let me put it in context in two ways. And this goes to when Pat says, moderate your practice when something. Maybe three ways. Sometimes our body knows something that we don't know. Sometimes our body knows something that we don't know. So a way of practicing is to really inquire into what's going on in the body in those moments. Is it about my back pain? Am I resisting back pain? Is it about a feeling that's happening? So a quality of real investigation, real curiosity. What's going on here? So stepping back from trying to impose some sort of practice, to really be curious, what's going on here? There's a wonderful story that Jane Goodall tells. When she was 4.5, she really, really wanted to know how a chicken laid an egg, where the hole was that the egg came out of. And it seems that nobody would tell her. And so she decided to follow the chicken into the coop one day, and the chicken understandably went berserk, flew out of the coop, and that was the end of that. But Jane Goodall, even at 4.5 being Jane Goodall, didn't give up. She said, oh, I made a mistake. That didn't work. So she had another plan. So she developed another plan. She said, okay, we have 4 chicken coops. That one's empty. I'm going to go in there and I'm just going to sit and I'm going to wait until a chicken comes in. And I'm going to see what happens when that chicken comes in. So she's 4.5 years old and she sits there for 4 hours waiting for a chicken to come in so she can sit there quietly and watch what happens. And sure enough, after 4 hours, chicken comes in, lays an egg, and she is ecstatic. She found out, she runs out and she runs into her mother, who has called the police in the meantime because they can't find Jane Goodall. But she is totally ecstatic. She has figured out how the chicken lays an egg. And she says that was the beginning of, my little scientist mind, making a mistake, regrouping, and looking to see, how does this work? How does this work? And sometimes when we hear meditation instructions, the instruction seems to be saying, and sometimes it is saying, seems to be saying, just be with it. Like if there's, say, profound anxiety, just be with it. And that might not be quite what's called for. It might be, but it might not be. And so does this experience, I know there's another whole thing, but how does this work for me? How does this work for me, and what is needed? So, is this, if I really sit with this and listen to my body, is there sadness in my heart that just wants a hand on it? Is there experience in my back that wants a chiropractor? Do I need to lie down rather than what's needed here? And can we allow ourselves to be the authority on what's needed? Okay? So, this little 4.5-year-old who is giving herself the authority to determine how this works. What's needed here? Okay, so I'm looking at the person who asked the question. Have you something to work with? Okay. Okay, another question. I love that you suggest that I can give, this is to everyone. Barb sent this to everyone. I love that you suggest that I can give my body what it wants during meditation. I find that I fall asleep when I close my eyes, and I also relax most when I look out a window. Thank you. And that actually relates to another question, which is very similar. Of tranquility. It's pretty common with me lately, not really asleep, but not awake either. And so what helps? What helps? Where does my body get? Mary Louise last week was talking about the balance, the balance of energy and tranquility, and what helps. And sometimes what we in a kind of window of calm-ish. Doesn't have to be like, enlightened calm, but enough calm so that we're not so agitated that we really can't focus, and we're not so relaxed that we're falling asleep. And again, so what's needed? So Barb is noticing that actually meditating with her eyes open brings a quality of calm. I actually noticed that too tonight when I was seeing. By the way, seeing, sometimes when we're hyper agitated, when we get, we kind of fall into an experience where we're kind of overwhelmed, bringing awareness to just simply seeing can really help to calm the body down, even before we get to paying attention to the breath. I don't know if any of you noticed that during the meditation tonight. I guess, Barb, you did. Seeing actually is a way of regulating the nervous system. And that just letting seeing happen can actually help to calm the nervous system. So when we need to calm the nervous system, we just allow seeing. Somebody else asked, or Kristen, you sent that to everyone too, asked about the trap of tranquility. And there, that might be an inquiry into, okay, what will bring some energy up? For some people, opening the eyes will bring the energy up in some circumstances. Um, uh, so what will bring the energy up? Sometimes we need to kind of move a bit to bring the energy up a little bit. Um, so that we want to kind of have that window where there's enough calm and not so much agitation that we really can't focus. It's not skillful. When I was talking about the meditate, this young woman had a mother who was schizophrenic and was a late teenager at a time when you're most vulnerable to, kind of severe crises. Had a mother who was schizophrenic, so was genetically predisposed to schizophrenia and was experiencing profound anxiety. And what was needed for her, I would propose, isn't, quote, meditation so much as some practices that will calm her nervous system. Meditation will automatically calm the nervous system, but actually meditation in that case could actually take her further into the anxiety and into the agitation, and that is not someplace we want her to go. Because she doesn't have enough context. When we started the meditation tonight with the whole thing about looking around the room, feeling your body, we're really just looking around, seeing the people. We're trying to establish a context where the body and the mind knows that there's some safety. It's okay to be here. And in that case, this young woman did not have enough of a context of safety and nervous system regulation for meditation to be actually helpful to her. It was much more likely, in my opinion, to be harmful to her, to take her further into dysregulation rather than regulation. Does anybody want to say anything? The one to do all the talking here. Anybody want to jump in there? Okay, what else? Okay, there aren't any more questions right now, but one thing that I wanted to note is this whole thing about regulation and the whole thing about regulating your nervous system. Because sometimes we can get flooded with experience and we don't know what to do with it in meditation. And I think that's what Pat was referring to when he was talking about backing off. But then the question is, okay, if I back off, where do I go with it if I get flooded? Actually, the other night, I was already pretty anxious because there was a child in my family who was having a young child who was having some pretty severe medical problems that night. And just before I went to bed, my husband comes bounding up the stairs and says, Ruth Bader Ginsburg died. All right, so now I've got and it's about time for me to go to bed. And so I realized that my overwhelmed. And so then the question really is not so much, okay, can I meditate and now start to fight with myself to try to tell my nervous system to calm down? You know, it's like I should be able to meditate. I teach this stuff after all. You know, I should be able to do that. So and sometimes we do it. Sometimes when we sit to meditate, we actually start engaging in this kind of battle with ourselves to get someplace that we think we're supposed to be. And the invitation is actually to be where we are. In that case, in that moment, my nervous system was pretty agitated. Um, and I didn't have a lot of extra, mm, extra context, if you will, extra awareness, extra space. So the thing that is called for there, first of all, is to give it some space, to give it some context. Because if that part of my nervous system is activated, that's actually the fight for me. Um, the anxiety and the fight or excessively, or if I'm in freeze, if I'm just shut down, I'm not going to be able to meditate. I'm going to be catatonic, and I can look for all practical purposes like I'm meditating, but it isn't really meditating. It's just sort of sitting there still while time passes. So the invitation is actually to bring my nervous system back into a more manageable range first. And so we spent a lot of time in the guided meditation really looking at ways to do that. Ways to do that. Ways to bring your nervous system back into a range where it has some space in which to navigate whatever it is that's difficult. We looked at seeing, just seeing, not seeing anything in particular, just seeing. We looked at hearing. We looked at feeling this body. What I did was I went downstairs to my meditation room. I laid on the floor with my legs up, and I listened to this chant. And I just listened without, like trying to make my body do anything. And I noticed that as I did that, my breathing got more regular, which is a sign that I'm coming out of that fight or flight response and into more regulation. My breathing got deeper, it got more regular, and my mind was less frantic. So sometimes, some of you have noticed that sometimes on retreats that will happen, that will sort of drop into a pocket of something that hasn't been digested fully in the past, and we'll drop into it and we just get overwhelmed and we go, I don't know where this is coming from and I don't know what to do about this. And the first thing to do is to bring the nervous system back into regulation. So for me, that was something that happened. Somebody else herself out of regulation, goes out into nature. Actually, I have two friends who do it differently. One goes out for a walk, and the other one goes out and finds rocks to lie on. And just lays on the rocks and lets the rocks help ground her and bring her back into regulation. Music. Fred and Susan did a thing on music, and music can do the same sort of thing. But that we don't want to kind of start fighting with ourselves, nor do we want to start trying to make ourselves meditate when really what's called for. I think that's one thing that is actually missing a lot in meditation instructions. Well, the other thing about meditation is that, remember, the Buddha taught 84,000 kinds of meditation. And Jack Kornfield has that book, which is Living, I think it's Living Dharma or something like that. And in it, he describes 12 different Theravadan masters and how they disagree with each other about how you're supposed to meditate. And that's just Southeast Asia. His book does not cover anything about the different Tibetan teachers, doesn't cover anything about the different Zen teachers, doesn't, or any of the different, that there are, many, many different ways of meditation. And we can lock ourselves into some idea that we have to do it some particular way. Or yesterday even, some particular way worked. And today, today it doesn't. I need something different. And so then we have to be like Jane Goodall. We have to kind of where's the hole that the chicken comes, that the eggs out of? You know, how does this work for me in my body, and what might be needed? Maybe more energy, maybe I need to calm down, maybe I need to lay down, maybe I need to see lots of different possibilities. Look, there's another new message here. So he says, thanks for teaching trauma dharma. You know what I've discovered, and I will send this to you. There is a new essay that or a new chapter actually discovered by Stephen Porges, who teaches about trauma. And he teaches about the new science of, get this, contemplative neuroscience. And what they are discovering is that unless this body is regulated, unless the body is not in fight, flight, or freeze, we cannot access compassion. So that the body needs to be in this regulated state in order for meditation to, quote, work. Now, the Buddha, in the Buddha's time, my theory is that in the Buddha's time, people were, although there was no shortage of stresses or difficulties in that time. But one thing that they did have, first of all, they didn't have media, and the media's job is to keep us in fight, flight, or freeze. That's how they make money, to keep us dysregulated. And they didn't have the kind of intense culture that we have. A lot of Eastern teachers are like completely mystified at the kind of suffering in the West because of our culture. And they had much more of a sense of community, much more of a sense of shared good support. And so this, so our modern American culture really ignores, so Buddhist teachers tend to ignore the need for nervous system regulation because they already knew how to do it. And Western teachers tend to ignore it because, well, we all live in dysregulation, so whatever. But that we need to combine the two, contemplative neuroscience. Isn't it great? It's a whole new discipline where they're studying not so much how meditation helps the body to regulate, but how the body helps the meditation to regulate. And that without the body being in certain states, we cannot access some of the deeper contemplative states. So a whole new science that's emerging about that. So I wanted to, there can be some sense of failure or sense of shame if we find ourselves in a place where, if you will, meditation doesn't work, or it doesn't work the way we think it's supposed to. And just to kind of, just see if there can be some softness about that, and letting go of that it really is more of a question of inquiry. Can we start where we are? Can we give ourselves permission to be exactly where we are, even when where we are is that the internet kind of fades in and out? And can we let that be a practice of being right here, right now, looking to see what's needed? You've heard me tell this story. When my mother was first in a dementia unit, she got quite violent and angry at me. And I just remember leaving one day and just saying, I can't do this. This is just too hard. I can't do this. And as I breathed with that, I thought, well, maybe I'll learn patience. Maybe I'll learn something here. Maybe I'll learn just how to slow down and be patient. And indeed, I learned a lot about patience. The jewel is in the heart of the lotus. The jewel is there. The jewel is there. And the inquiry is, how does this work? How does this work? And very often we need the voice of another to help us see how it works. Because we're so used to kind of seeing it within our own frame. Let me see if we got anything else. And I think that's it. Anything else? Anybody want to add anything or ask anything or challenge anything or? Let's see, go to my second page, see if there's anybody there. We good? Maybe in closing, let me just read a little bit. You may be familiar with this. Pinkola Estes wrote quite some time ago, actually. And the title of it is, I pause when my screen says I have an unstable connection. The title of it is, We Were Made for These Times. And you can look that up. She says, my friends, do not lose heart. We were made for these times. In any dark time, there is a tendency to veer toward fainting over how much is wrong or unmended in the world. Do not focus on that. There is a tendency, too, to fall into being weakened by dwelling on what is outside your reach, by what cannot yet be. Do not focus there. Ours is not the task of fixing the entire world, to mend the part of the world that is within our reach. Any small, calm thing that one soul can do to help another soul, to assist some portion of this poor, suffering world, will help immensely. And then she makes a metaphor of that we're like great ships. And then she says, when a great ship is in harbor and moored, it is safe there. There can be no doubt. But that is not what great ships are built for. And she says, we were built for these times. Do not lose heart. So do not lose heart. And part of heart is the kind of courage and fearless inquiry about what's needed for me here now. You heard me quote Ajahn Chah. You don't think you have a 10-wheeler when you have a wheelbarrow. You know, be with what you have. And then here's a quote from Andy Olinsky. He says, we have to be careful not to be too hard on ourselves. Just because the Buddha says it's possible for these fires to go out, it doesn't mean we should expect it to happen by Tuesday. So can we be patient? Can we be kind? Can we be curious? Can we start where we are? Can we know there are lots and lots and lots of paths? Can we know that our bodies matter? Can we listen to them? Can we, use the resources? I see Cecilia here, of people like, body workers who can help us, help us reorganize when our bodies are out of sorts. Can we use to bring us back online in a way and gives us a space to do one small thing, even if the one small thing is to just find a space to be kind with ourselves. Okay. Yeah, the Clarissa Pinkola Estes one, is that the one you want, Barb? Yeah, wait a minute, let me go back to that page. Hold on, yeah. Yeah, actually, what I do, yes, thanks, Chris, investigating some kind of breath work. There are a zillion, there are so many ways, and you each know them. You each know different ways of helping this body to be regulated and doing these kinds of investigations. What I'll do is I will ask Judy to make, I'll figure out how to make a link to this, to that essay by Clarissa, and maybe I'll send you to a link to the interview. Krista, she tells that story. Okay, I'll send you those, and yeah, and if any of you want, I won't, well, I'll send the link to the Porges article too, and then you'll all have it. Some of you won't be interested in it. It's a pretty technical article on neuroscience, but if you're interested in that, that might be a really good introduction to contemplative neuroscience. So I'll send you those. Okay, there we are. Blessings.